Is a Roth conversion even worth it? I mean, there's a lot of work that comes into deciding if you should Roth convert and if you should. And then there's even more work associated with deciding how much to Roth convert and what's the optimal amount and what do you do if you have Medicare premiums or Social Security tax and what about capital gains? And it's complex. And so is it even worth it? Is our time and maybe seeking out professional advice even worth doing Roth conversions? Well, I'm going to talk about the pros and cons of Roth conversions, answer that from both sides in the video today. But you're going to find throughout the video and at the end of the video, I'm going to tell you that Roth conversions for the right person can save over hundreds of thousands of dollars over their retirement. So if that's important to you, it may be worthwhile to take this steps. But let's start by talking about who it's not good for and who it is for. And so that's what's in the store for today for this episode of Joe Knows Retirement.
Joe knows taxes.
Joe knows the market.
Joe knows Social Security.
Joe knows income planning.
Joe knows pickleball? No.
This is Joe Knows Retirement.
So let's first start off this video by just talking about a Roth conversion is not for everyone. And I'll kind of detail out who it's not right for. Typically, it's not good for those who maybe haven't saved as much. And so we know the majority of people who watch these videos, the majority of the clients that we work with, we call them the Midwestern Millionaire, right? It's actually a book that I'm writing that will be out soon. In addition to the book I've already written called I Hate Taxes, which is for those who have been diligent savers of how to pay less in taxes. And in that book, I Hate Taxes, we talk a lot about these types of tax planning strategies such as a Roth conversion, of the advantages of it, but also things you need to look out for. So if you're looking for a further resource to really detail that of what that looks like, that's a place that I would start there. And then the other book is a Midwestern Millionaire, which is those are typically people who have saved at least $1 million and they have Midwestern values. And no matter where you are in the entire country, you could have Midwestern values and be frugal and hardworking and want to make sure you're maximizing and pay the least amount in taxes. And so for those people, Roth conversions almost always make sense as what we see. But maybe you have less than $1 million. Maybe you have $250,000 or less saved up in your 401k or your IRA and tax deferred. And well, for you, it may not make as much sense to do a Roth conversion because you're not going to really have a tax burden down the line. I mean, if you have $250,000, when you reach RMDH, called required minimum distributions, when you're either 73 or 75, you're going to be required to take out 4% of that $250,000. You only may have to take out about $10,000 per year at that point moving forward. That may not bump you up tax brackets. That may not lead to you having a similar income or higher income than you have now, because obviously you have to worry about Social Security, but $10,000 on top of Social Security, I may not be as concerned about. And so for those people, you're probably always going to be in a lower tax bracket. And you've probably heard that same saying yourself, even if you are that Midwestern millionaire, that you'll be in a lower tax bracket throughout retirement. And the question I have for you is, do you think that's actually going to be true for your situation? And most of the people we work with, it's just not true. And the reason why is because they have Social Security, that it's pretty significant because it's based on the amount that you've worked, the amount of years, but also the amount of income. Typically, the people we work with have had a higher income. Maybe not extreme high, maybe not $1 million a year, but they've probably made anywhere from $80,000 to $120,000 a year. That's going to lead to you having a pretty significant Social Security check. And then also if your spouse worked too, then they're going to have their check on top of that. And so you're going to have all that guaranteed income. And then you're also going to have these RMDs that I just talked about, which if you have $1 million or more, it's going to be at least $40,000 a year and potentially more by the time that $1 million grows. Or maybe you have $3 million, that's already going to be $120,000, potentially more if it continues to grow. And that RMD continues to increase the older you get. So even though it's 4% now, it actually could be up to 9% in your 90s. And so each year you wait, your money grows and your withdrawal rate grows, and so does your income grow. And ultimately the question is do you think tax rates will be higher or lower in the future? And if you think they're going to be higher in the future and you think that your income is going to be just as high as it is now versus when you're working, well, then that's where Roth conversions can start to make more sense. But again, if you're never going to find yourself in a higher income, maybe you shouldn't do Roth conversions. So, we're pretty extreme on Roth conversions on our opinion of them. But remember, the type of people we work with is different than what most people out there are. There's only 10% of the people out there that have a net worth of $1 million or more. So we're not talking to everyone. And that's something we always have to remind people of with our firm is we have a boutique approach. We don't just try to serve everyone. We have a specialized niche that we serve, those Midwestern millionaires as we described them, because the type of strategies that we do are different than someone who doesn't have as much saved. Nothing wrong with those people, and we absolutely want to help them, and we do by different educational workshops and different things like that to add education to anyone. but we may not be the best service to help them because they don't need as much help. Their strategies are going to be a lot more simpler than someone who has more saved up. So just understand the complexity that you now have if you have saved up more money. So that's the one thing we want to look at with a Roth conversion, is just really ensuring that you're not paying more in tax than what it would cost you to do it now. So for example, let's say you're in the 12% tax bracket now and you're going to be expected to be in the 25% tax bracket in 2026 when tax rates go up. Well, if that's the case, we may want to pay that tax now at 12% than at 25%. So we always look at, are we going to pay higher taxes now or later, right? Maybe you're in the 22% tax bracket now. Well, that's going to change to the 25%. So let's pay it now before it goes up to 25%. Those are the types of ways that this can make sense. But if you're in the 37% bracket now in the highest tax bracket, and you're expecting to be in the 15% bracket in the future, you probably shouldn't do Roth conversions. You probably should just pay your taxes there. So lots of stipulations involved here. But for a lot of our clients, like we'll talk about, later in the video, that there's other things beyond just that federal tax bracket that we have to look at to see if Roth conversions are worthwhile, but also, why it may make sense to start doing more of that. So I don't want to get too ahead of myself of getting excited about the opportunities that Roth conversion presents. I want to talk a little bit more about who it's not right for. And another person that's not right for is someone who may be more charitable minded. So for example, one of our clients, she gives all of her money to a charity every year, and she plans when she passes, it's going to go all to a charity. She's not going to leave much money behind to anyone who is, living here, a beneficiary during her time. So for her, why would we do a Roth conversion and pay the tax now if we're going to give it to a charity where it's tax-free anyways? And then when she's 70 and a half, she can actually give money from her IRA to a charity tax-free. That's called a qualified charitable distribution. And so she's planning on whatever RMD is, she's planning on giving the majority of that away to the charity anyways. So we really don't have a tax problem here. And why would we pay a tax when we don't have to in the future? So for those who are overly charitable minded, I'll say, then again, Roth conversions can make less sense. And so if you find yourself given, $10,000 or more a year, well, it's going to depend on how much you have saved up, but, maybe we don't have to be as aggressive with our Roth conversions, because that $10,000, when you do reach that RMD age, can count towards that RMD. So if you have a $20,000 RMD and you want to give $10,000 to a charity, well, you only have to take out $10,000. And again, you're right back to that person with $250,000. You may not have a big tax burden if that's you at that point. And so that's where it really comes down to, how does all of this play together? So, the other reason why we see a lot of people maybe just don't want to mess with this is it's hard to determine, right? I mentioned that at the beginning of the video. There's a lot of calculations. With our clients, we're spending at least 10 to 20 hours just to get them a tax plan. That's only one of the 5 pillars that we work with our clients on. And it can take us 10 to 20 hours for this Midwestern millionaire to get this work done. That's a lot. And unless you're going to hire a professional team to do it for you, I don't know how you would be able to do it on your own, no matter how sophisticated you are, because you need software. I mean, I like to think I'm a very intelligent person, but I would not try to make a decision, out of the top of my head of telling someone how to Roth convert. I'm going to trust our software, and I'm going to trust all the reports and calculations that we do to help make those decisions. So there's so much more into it, because all this stuff plays together. Because when you do a conversion, it's not just about looking at your federal tax brackets like I mentioned earlier. You have to look at the impact of your Social Security taxes, right? Maybe you're already receiving Social Security. Maybe you haven't received Social Security yet. What's the impact of that? Are you going to end up paying more in Social Security taxes? Are you going to be able to get Social Security tax-free by doing a conversion? What amount do you need to do to get there? Or maybe Medicare premiums, right? Medicare is based on your income. The higher your income, the more you have to pay for health care, but you get the same coverage. So maybe if we are already 63 or older, because Medicare premiums start getting calculated at 63, so when you're 65, they look back 2 years to whatever your income was in 63, and that's how they determine how much you're going to pay for Medicare. And so maybe you're 63, maybe we shouldn't do a huge Roth conversion, because now we're going to force Medicare to be potentially double, triple, quadruple the cost than if we were just to stay below that tier that's there. Or maybe it makes sense to go all the way through Medicare and pay the highest cost now, because maybe we only have to pay higher Medicare costs for 1 year to give us the lifetime ability to not have to worry about increased premiums. So those are the types of things you have to look at and explore as you make these types of decisions. And where are you going to sit in the future? What's your projected income going to be in the future? Or all the things, and that's hard to determine. So that's why we would see maybe someone say, that's not worth doing that. I don't really care about maximizing my finances that much to spend that much more time, or to pay someone to do this for me. If that's you, then I don't know how to help you. If you don't see the value in the Roth conversions and you don't want to spend the time, I always tell people you can't lead a horse to water and make them drink, right? you've got to want to do that for yourself. And so I hope through this video I'm going to be able to show you from from here on throughout the video of all the advantages that a Roth conversion can do for that right person. So if you're someone that I haven't mentioned, you've been a diligent saver, maybe you are charitable minded, but you do just have large RMDs that you're not going to plan to give it all away. And if you really want to maximize and you're not the type of person that just says, it's too hard, I'm not going to deal with it, then what we're going to talk about here over the rest of the video is going to be very, very beneficial for you, is what my guess will be. So one of the biggest advantages of a Roth conversion as we get into this side of the story is the tax-free growth potential. I mean, just think about it. If you have $1 million today, let's just say your tax rate is 25% to make numbers easy. 25% of $1 million is $250,000 tax burden that you have here today. If this $1 million grows to $2 million and you leave it in that tax-deferred investment, you have now doubled your tax burden over your retirement. You now have to pay, let's just assume the same tax rate of 25%, which, as you know my opinion, I think they're going to go higher, but let's just say 25%. Your tax bill on $2 million is now $500,000 versus $250,000. So you're significantly reducing your lifetime tax bill, but also if you have $2 million, remember that RMD we talked about earlier? 4% of $2 million is $80,000 that you're required to take out. 4% of $1 million is $40,000. You're doubling the amount of income you have to take out in retirement, which potentially is going to bump you up tax brackets, force Medicare to cost more, force Social Security to cost more, or you pay more tax on Social Security. You don't have to pay for Social Security, you already have, but they do tax it if your income is above a certain point. And so those are the things that you really have to worry about, is like, hey, if you really want to pay taxes, that tax-free growth potential can be pretty powerful, not only for your life, but also for your spouse's life and your kid's life. And that's something we refer to as what's called the widow's penalty and the kiddo's penalty. The widow's penalty says that if you pass away, your tax brackets will go from married filing jointly to single. And if you've ever studied the tax brackets, you'll understand that that's going to allow that spouse to have to pay about double the amount of taxes. And so that's not a great thing. And so if we can get ahead of this and we can take their tax deferred money and put some of it into tax free, well, now that spouse will have the ability to not have to take all of these withdrawals from the IRA, which becomes taxable. They now could take it out tax free, which would pay the tax while they're married at lower rates. And then when they are at disadvantaged rates, they can take out from the Roth to allow them to pay less taxes. So that's the type of advantage that a Roth can give, is that flexibility, that control, right? The other thing I really like about a Roth is we are in control. We decide when we pay that tax rate. We're not just hoping with all of our money in tax deferred, that Uncle Sam is a partner on. He's going to decide what tax rate that's going to be. And right now we know what those rates are, but do you know what the rates are going to be in 10 years of what share he's going to get? It's kind of like going into business with someone and saying, hey, I'm willing to get into business with you. I'll be a partner, but I'm going to tell you exactly how much I get when we sell the business. I don't think that's a fair business deal if someone can do that when you're the one who's worked hard and owned the business and built the business, for some guy to come in here and say, instead of making tax rates 22%, I'm actually going to make it 40%. And that means that I get $400,000 over the million versus, $220,000 if it was 22%. So you can see that it's not necessarily the fairest way. And so that's why I like having a diversification. All my eggs are in different baskets, so I can have more control that if tax rates are going to be really high in the future, I'll take out from Roth. If tax rates are going to be very low in the future like they are now, then I'll take out from the IRAs, right? But you want to have that control and flexibility so that you can dictate the amount of taxes you pay in retirement versus allowing Uncle Sam just to take you wherever he wants and have you pay as much as he wants versus you actually knowing what that is. And so back to the other idea here with the kiddo's penalty is now, due to the new rule changes, your kids have to take your IRA over 10 years. And so for them, if you're a diligent saver, that could be very significant increases in their income over this 10-year period. And so the difference, though, if they have a Roth, they still have to take it out in 10 years, but they don't have to pay any taxes when they make those withdrawals. And so that can leave them with way more wealth because they won't have to pay the higher tax bracket than if you just paid it now, which probably could be lower with the lower tax rate environment that we're seeing. So the widows and kiddos penalties, if that's your goal, is to leave money behind to your spouse or kids, that's where a Roth can also become advantageous for you. And we also talked about, actually I don't know if we talked about this point earlier, but there is no RMD on a Roth. So for you personally, when you reach that 73 or 75, depending on your age, you're not going to be required to have to pay taxes on that Roth, for one, but two, you're not going to be able to force to take that out. That's going to continue growing tax-free as you progress throughout your retirement, which can lead to that tax-free growth that we've talked about and that compounding growth over time, which can be very advantageous. And the other pro tip for you there, if you do have money in a Roth, typically that's going to be more of our growth-oriented type of investment within our retirement plan, because all that growth is tax-free. So if we're going to try to seek a 10% return, let's put it in a Roth. If we're just trying to get more of a stable, no chance of loss, 5% growth, let's put that in the IRA so that, less growth means less tax, right? More growth, let's get that tax-free. So just a quick pro tip for you there. But the other things I want to mention, which I've already mentioned here, is the Medicare premiums and Social Security tax. By having your money in a Roth, that's not going to impact those two things. That's going to allow you to have your Social Security potentially less taxable, or you could even get your Social Security tax-free if your income is at a certain point. And we have clients who, they're living on $100,000 a year, but their Social Security is tax-free because they're able to take income from tax-free vehicles, and that allows them to get their Social Security tax-free, which leads to a lot more money in their pocket. And then Medicare premiums, as we've already discussed, taking money from a Roth doesn't show that on your Medicare premium income that uses to calculate what you're going to pay there. And then also, if you have a pension, then Roth conversions are going to make a lot of sense also. As you know from watching our videos, we have a specialty in serving those with a pension. And so if that's you're already going to start your income higher. You may never be in a lower tax bracket. It could make sense to start shifting this money over now during the low tax rate environment, as we've discussed. So with that being the case, if you're watching this video at this point and you say, hey, I really like this idea of a Roth, I want to explore further to see if this is for me, I think it's definitely worth the time to do. And maybe you're just like, I don't know what to do though. How do I do this? And what do I look for? I don't have the software. That's what we're here for. Feel free to schedule a time with us. So there should be a description in the link below that you'll be able to pick a time here to meet with us. Just to be, let you know of how that conversation goes. It's basically just get a better understanding of what you're looking for and see if we can help. And we try to take as many calls of those as we can for people who request calls with us. So we do a pretty good job at making sure we can do all those. We do get a lot of people that reach out to us. Just to be clear, we don't work with everyone who reaches out to us. So we do have a specific criteria for our clients that we work with, but don't let that discourage you from getting help from us. We created this YouTube channel and this podcast to be able to guide and help others. And so 15 minutes of our time to do a call with you, we'll make sure you're in the right direction. So if we can serve you, we'll talk further about exploring further of what that could look like. If we can't serve you, then we'll at least try to guide you to someone else who can, or give you the guidance of how you can do this on your own, or whatever that may look like. So that's what we're here for. Hopefully that can be a resource for you. And with that said, just do your due diligence, right? I hope you don't walk away from here and instantly do a Roth conversion because I talked about all these pros of it. Again, everyone's situation is different. Make sure you're getting that professional advice to make sure you're making the right decision. So with that being said, enjoy the rest of your retirement, as I always say, and pay the least amount of taxes so that you can use that savings to continue to enjoy what you've worked so hard for. So enjoy the rest of your day.